Hello, welcome back to Leaders Live. We got some good guests today. Liz, Wessel, and Dahl. We're gonna bring her in. We are live right now. There we go. Hi, Liz.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great to have you on. I appreciate your time. Before we get into the interview and the talk, we're going to bring in Michael Mara, CEO of Entre Networking Group, just to give his 30 seconds to a minute talk about what he's doing. Mike, welcome.
Hey, Charlie. What's going on, everybody? Hi, Liz. How's it going?
Good.
I'm super pumped for this interview.
So over to you, Mike. We'll give you the floor, let you talk about Entre, and Mike's going to be helping out with the Q&A as well towards the end of the show. So give it over to Mike, and it's all yours, Mike.
All right. Thank you. So for those of you all watching, we're streaming on a few different platforms here. I don't know. Looks like it just froze. I'm not sure if you guys can still hear
me. I can hear you. I can still hear you. You look good. That's all matters.
Oh, cool. For those of you watching on social, make sure that you drop your comments and questions for Liz. I'll be keeping track of everything throughout the interview on the different social platforms. If you're watching it on our website, there's going to be a little chat there at the bottom that will come right to my phone if you guys have questions through there. Or if you're just watching on YouTube, then feel free to just comment there. Same thing with LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, everything else. If you're learning, if you haven't been to any of our events or don't know what we do here at Entre, we're a social network for entrepreneurs and the future of work, freelancers, startups. We're really just trying to help as many people as we can start companies easier and faster. We just rolled out our app. So if you want early access to that, to find co-founders, developers, mentors, investors easier and faster, get into a life.
Looks like we lost Mike, but you can check out the app at joinentre.com. It's a great app. A lot of investors and founders on there as well. Nadal, can you bring Liz back in?
Hey.
All right. Having a little bit of difficulty. Sometimes that happens with the streaming, but we'll get through this. It's all right. So again, welcome to the show. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to mention what Mike was kind of alluding to. He's got a nice network of 40,000 entrepreneurs and investors on that network. So we are streaming live on their platform as well as ours. So as the comments come in or whatever it is, it's shared. It's through Entre as well. So I think you're going to get a little bit of the audience of my connections on LinkedIn, which are founders, venture capital CEOs. And then you get the whole Entre network as well, which is startup founders, people looking to possibly invest, and possibly people looking for jobs too, which fits in nicely here. So, I mean, you are obviously a great founder, two-time founder, very smart individual. Founded WayUp recently, but a few years back, and you're doing quite well. You've gone through a couple rounds as well. So we have a lot to talk about, but I want to bring it back and give everybody a little bit of context as well. I mean, you are by heart an entrepreneur, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about Entre and everything that's going on. When you went to UPenn, you started your own company and you interned at a bunch of different other places. Can you give some context of how you started your business career? I mean, it reads like a ridiculous Rolodex of, you worked on Capitol Hill to interning Anheuser-Busch, Blackstone, and a little company called Google. So you did it well. Can you give us a little bit of, a prelude of how that happened and how you navigated that?
Sure. Thank you for the very kind words. So again, I'm Liz. I am born and raised in New York City, and I went to Penn, as you mentioned. And at Penn, I never really necessarily knew exactly what I wanted to do for a living. And so I tried out all different types of jobs, from finance internship to a campus ambassador role for Anheuser-Busch, as you mentioned, where my job was actually to help them recruit Penn students. And I just kept seeing, it was really difficult as a college student to figure out what you want to do for a living. And B, it was very difficult as an employer working on behalf of Anheuser-Busch to recruit great talent, to help, to recruit great talent and diverse talent and qualified talent. And so I kept seeing that firsthand and really felt like there was a core issue going on. Fast forward, I ended up going to Google for my first job out of college after an internship there. I loved it. I had an incredible experience, first in California at headquarters in Mountain View, and then in India working in product marketing. And again, had an awesome experience and decided that I wanted to I wanted to start my own company, which I kind of always knew, but that I wanted to do something that would make a difference in the world and that would help both students and employers, and in a way that really would, and sorry for my dog in the background, but in a way that would really improve the world. And so we decided to focus on helping employers recruit qualified, diverse talent. So 6 years later, it's been 6 years, which is crazy.
6 years, yes.
6 years later, we're here today, and we're a team of about 50 people. And we just do great. We work with great employers to help them recruit.
Yeah. Let's pause for a minute, though. What can you give us maybe a lesson learned through working with all those great companies, Google, Anheuser-Busch, whatever it may be, starting your own company? I mean, what did you learn through that process that helped you get to where you are today?
A lot at Google, because I was there for a few years. First of all, I had amazing mentors. So they taught me about hard work. They taught me about the importance of having a really smart team. And so I'm really proud to say that we tried to take those learnings and we've recruited an incredible and very smart team at WayUp, in my humble opinion. And so I would say I learned a lot about hard work, and I learned a lot about innovation, and always trying to, there's one thing. So we did Y Combinator early on. And so I learned this part at Y Combinator and part at Google, but like, when you build an experience, how can you think about, if it's a 5-star experience, what does 6 stars look like? What does 7 stars look like? And so our product team, for example, just recently launched this really cool feature where we source and we screen candidates for our clients. And so when an employer is recruiting through us, if they have a candidate who applies for one of their jobs, I'm giving an example to answer your question, I promise. But if a candidate applies for a job through WayUp and they want to then phone screen and move forward to the next interview, which most people do want to do when you apply for a job, we kind of call it internally like Uber for interviewing, where you can actually schedule your interview right there on the spot. And so that was our product team thinking, okay, what is a 5-star experience? A 5-star experience is every time you apply for a job, you hear back within 24 hours. Okay, cool. So we got that. Now what's a 6-star experience? Well, what if you could know if you qualify for a phone screen immediately? And you find out instantaneously, okay, that's 6 stars. So we built that. Then what's a 7-star experience? Well, you could even schedule your phone interview right there and then. And so I think Google really taught me about kind of always reaching for the stars and trying to even, they have a principle called great isn't good enough. And it's one of our leadership principles that we stole from there, that we're always looking for ways to get even better.
I like that. Great isn't good enough. That's amazing. And you have a great company right now. But let's talk about WayUp, the go-to platform to hire qualified, diverse talent for students and grads looking for internships and other careers out of college. Talk about a little bit what the company's doing, what you're doing, and the platform itself.
Sure. So we are like a B2C and a B2B platform. So on the B2C side, we have millions of college students and recent graduates who use WayUp to look for jobs and opportunities. It's a really diverse audience. It's 2/3 female, 1/3 Black and Hispanic, and mixed candidates. And so really, really proud of the fact that and the students, by the way, represent over 7,000 campuses throughout the country. And so we're really proud of the fact that we try to represent as many different types of candidates as possible. And then from an employer perspective, they can create an account. They work with us. If you're a small business, feel free to email hire, HIRE at wayup.com, and we'd love to work with you. But if you're a small business all the way to a large company, an enterprise-sized company, you can go to WayUp. You can post jobs, but you can also source through our candidates, just like you would on LinkedIn, but a little more of a focus on early career. So on LinkedIn, you can't really say like, show me students who study computer science and know Java and are on a sports team. Like, you can get really specific. You can also use diversity filters, which are all EEOC and OFCCP compliant, that enable companies to get more diverse candidates into their funnel, which is really important us at WayUp and also for a lot of our clients, fortunately. So companies can log in, they can source candidates, and then we also will actually screen all the candidates for them. First with a digital screen, which is automated. And then if the client wants, we can also do a phone screen for the company so that they're only getting qualified top talent, diverse talent as well, which is really important because these companies don't always have a lot of time to spend just phone screening everyone or reviewing through resumes. And that usually leads to a lot of bias as well.
But it seems also like you're helping these candidates get qualified. I mean, you have the advice, and you have a whole on the website. You have the advice, you have the community. It's always helping them learn. I thought that was interesting. Maybe you want to touch on that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. So we do that in a bunch of ways. So first and foremost, when you apply for a job, you get a lot of feedback around kind of forward-looking feedback around here are good ways to prep. Here's an article about the company you should read. Make sure you come prepared knowing why you want that job. We give different pieces of feedback, and that's all programmed in based on the company or the job. And we have a team in-house that does content around each company and each job. So that's really exciting and helpful to most candidates. And then even after, if you do a phone screen with WayUp, we even give you coaching to the candidate, which is really cool. So we'll give you feedback based on how you did in the phone screen, which is definitely a differentiator. And a lot of companies love the fact that they're able to give that coaching to, thousands of candidates.
Plans? I saw there was a plans schedule as well. Is that plans for the employers or for the candidates itself?
I'm sorry, I said that again?
The plans on the website, it has plans, different types of plans.
Oh yeah. We don't charge students ever.
Right. Okay.
The average student graduates with so much debt that we're like, no way. So employers pay us, and if you're a small business, it's anywhere from like I think it's like $99 up to larger companies that have all the features across the board and are hiring a ton of people pay a lot more than that.
Right, and you're hiring yourself as well, right? The company is hiring, the company is growing.
We're hiring a lot. We just hired another customer success manager last week. We're hiring a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I think especially while we wait and see how, the market plays out with respect to like a lot of our employers and how much recruiting they're doing in the fall, we're not hiring too much right now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy times right now, all over the place. You got COVID. I mean, how are you seeing COVID affect what's going on with hiring, and what are you telling candidates and employers?
So, I mean, I think it's really important to bring up and we can't have this interview without talking about the movement that's going on right now.
Absolutely, that's what I was going to lead to. Absolutely, yeah.
Exactly. I know you were, and so to kind of address that, I was really nervous at the very beginning with COVID happening. This is back in March that. Companies would stop caring about and prioritizing diversity. Because to be totally frank, it's one of the main things we do at WayUp when it comes to our focus with our clients, when it comes to our goals with our clients, D&I, I&D, whichever way you want to put the order, it is very, very crucial to most of our relationships with our partners. And so we were really concerned that a lot of companies, because of what happened in the recession in 2008, 2009, where D&I became deprioritized, that a lot of companies would deprioritize it. And I've been so pleased over the last few months to see that companies are still putting diversity recruitment at the front and center of their recruitment strategies. And, this week, I'm sure it's even more top of mind than it's been in the past. And so I think that that's pretty fantastic, in my opinion, that companies haven't given up on that focus and that hope of hiring an inclusive and equitable workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely the most important thing right now. Everything that's going on, and the fact that you can help employers and candidates match up with diversity side of it. It's a wonderful thing. How about people who are looking for jobs? I mean, what types of tips are you looking at when you're talking about hiring? To get hired, somebody's looking for a job. How do you guys go about, guiding them the right way and talking to these employers so that they potentially land the job?
Yeah. So we treat, all candidates get the same treatment. And when you sign up, you create a profile, you fill out everything from your major and your school and languages you speak to, if you want to self-report your gender, your race, etc. And so when candidates sign up, they're given a ton of different content in addition to job recommendations, but they also have their profile then able to be seen by employers. So employers can now log in and say, I want to see women in tech. And they can actually say, like, I want to see people who self-report themselves to be women and who self-report themselves to be computer science majors, for example. So first and foremost, like, we help employers who are trying to find more diverse talent find them, and we help those candidates, those students and recent grads, get found by employers who otherwise they never might have even heard of. And then, as I mentioned, from a tips and advice perspective, we're giving them advice throughout the entire process to help them from everything from, like, what are the deadlines and when will you hear back from this employer, to here's best ways to prep. Here's more information about this job. Like, so many companies don't realize that a lot of students apply for their jobs and have no idea what the job is. And I myself am guilty of that. I remember when I was applying for a job at Google in college and I applied for a product marketing job, I was like, I don't really know what product marketing is, but I think you make commercials on TV. And obviously product marketing is so much more than that, although that's a part of it and certainly was a part of my job. But we're really in it to help educate these candidates, especially candidates who might not have ever otherwise had exposure to what that job or that company does. And that's really important as well, because so many candidates in the past have maybe done better in a process because they had someone prepping them the whole way, and that person was an employee of that company. And we're really trying to help underrepresented minorities, especially, get through these funnels when they don't have that inside scoop.
Sure. And the most important part, almost, when you're looking at an interview, is someone to help you prep and understand what the process is when they're hiring. Otherwise, you're going in there blind.
Exactly.
It's very helpful. I just want to also let everyone know we're going to be taking questions soon. So definitely put your questions in there. And I believe Mike's here somewhere, that he'll jump in at some point. But before we get to that, before we get to the questions, talk about networking. I mean, Entre is a networking group. It's got the app. It's bringing everyone together. I do a lot of networking. I mean, how do you look at networking and possibly trying to get jobs? But you also have a very large network, I think, probably from working at Google and all these other companies. How do you look at networking, and then how do you kind of follow up as well?
Yeah, I would say my network definitely grew a lot more with WayUp than with Google. Not that Google is a great network. It's just, of starting and running a company.
Well, I mean, Penn as well, right? I mean, you have a big network. You have a very nice network.
Even my co-founder always makes fun of me that even back to high school, I went to a very small school, and yet all the time I'm seeing people who went to my high school, and he always makes fun of me for that. But anyway, to answer your question, networking, it is such a brutal thing, because there is like a true reality to the fact that a lot of network begets network, right? Like, if someone introduces me to someone else, how did I get that first introduction? Even my very first investor. So the first investor that committed to us formally was David Tisch and Adam Rothenberg at Box Group. Amazing investors. But how did we get that intro? Because of a woman I knew who worked at Bessemer, who I went to college with, and we were friends with at Penn. And so how did I get to Penn? It all kind of helps one another. But when I am talking to students and recent grads who don't have a network to work off of, because I'm very aware of the fact that I was very privileged and lucky to have that, like, to get to Penn in the first place, which helped me get to Google, et cetera. I would say the biggest advice I give is cold emailing with really thoughtful emails. I am a huge cold emailer. If you Google my name and cold email, there's so many articles on Business Insider that they did a whole series with me on my thoughts around cold emailing, and cold emails have gotten me in the door with a lot of people who otherwise I don't know necessarily they would have ever met with me. And so my advice when I talk to people about cold emailing is short subject line, not too long of an email. Don't say pick your brain. It should be very specific about what you're looking for advice for, and show that you did your research. That email should go to someone in a way that that person feels like, okay, this email was not a BCC. This email is clearly meant for me. So for example, one time I emailed a very, 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 to be frank, she's a very famous businesswoman. She's always in the top 10 most influential women in the world, all of that. And I had no connections to her. No way of I I didn't know how to build a kind of rapport. So I Googled the heck out of her, and I learned that she had a hobby in high school that was my hobby, one of my hobbies in high school. And I'm trying to stay vague for a reason because she asked me not to share the fact that I did any of this, so that she wouldn't get inundated with other cold emails. But I found that we both had this very unusual hobby in common. And so I emailed her about it, put in the subject line, and wrote like first sentence, we're both fellow, former blah, blah, blahs. And then, I really just want to meet with you for 20 minutes just to ask you your advice on XYZ. I'd love to buy you coffee anytime, any place. And she ended up responding and saying, because I was in her city that week, she ended up saying, why don't you come to my house for dinner tomorrow? And I was like, oh my God, I freaked out. And she had all these other like incredibly well-known people at her house that evening. But my point being, I'm very into networking, and you don't have to have an in always. You just have to be smart about it and email enough people too, because not everyone is going to respond.
The art of the cold email. I love that. That's like straight out of a movie, and you get in to have dinner with everybody who's there. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was like I went out and got a new outfit for it. I was so excited.
That's so good. That's so good. You mentioned funding as well originally when you were talking about networking. We had a lot of founders from the Entre network that come on here, and they're always looking for funding, and they're trying to grow their business as well. What type of tips do you give for other founders or startups who are looking for funding? You've raised 3 rounds, almost over $27 million. So you know how it's done. What tips do you give there?
Yeah. We've raised well over 30 million. And I've been very, very, very fortunate to work with pretty incredible investors so far. And I would say the biggest advice and learning I've had from working with them is like, know your stuff, know your numbers inside and out. I think a lot of people go and try to fundraise and don't necessarily know all their numbers, and it comes out a lot of the time in the pitch when they're asking hard questions, and you're being more anecdotal about it than quantitative. And so I would say, like, number one is know your numbers, which sounds obvious, but a lot of entrepreneurs I talk to don't necessarily get that one. Number two is treat the fundraising game like a numbers game. Like, you just like sales, you should be looking at your funnel of how many meetings you have to get this many second meetings, to get this many third meetings, to get this many partner meetings, to get this many term sheets, and so on and so forth. And so some people think that, you only have to do 10 meetings, but a lot of the time it's actually just look at your funnel, and every company has a different funnel. And it doesn't mean one company is more fundable or better than another. It just might mean that maybe your niche that you're in is more interesting to more people, which again has nothing to do with the success of the business. And then I have a ton of other advice. I mean, I could go on for hours about advice I have, some of it right, some of it probably wrong. But other like tactical piece of advice, have a presentation version of your deck and an email version of your deck. So your presentation version should be very few words. If there are words on a slide, it should be able to be read in under 10 seconds of words, maybe under 15 seconds. And then the email version should be able to be read without any voiceover. So that's one example of tactical advice, but I'm sorry for my dog barking in the background. I'm sure that there's other advice I could think of if anyone wants to hear it.
That's great. I think you're dropping some gold here, some real gems. I like that a lot. Something we always ask is about collaboration opportunities and partnerships. What are you looking for at WayUp that you're looking to grow the business? Is it just employers? Is it, are you looking? What type, or how do you even look at partnership opportunities and collaborations?
Sure. I would say, so we partner with a lot of companies. Obviously, we have our partners who are employers, who are our customers. But outside of that, from like a business development perspective, we partner with companies that often have we're a marketplace. So we've got employers and we've got students and recent grads. So we partner with lots of companies who have a similar user base or customer base to us. So one example would be on the student and recent grad side. If there's a company, I know we just partnered with DoSomething.org. They have millions of high school and college students who volunteer for DoSomething.org. It's an incredible organization. So we love partnering with them because when we do that, we're able to, promote their services to our users and promote our services to their users. So it's an obvious example of a partnership that I think is pretty exciting. And then on the employer side, there are lots of other vendors that sell into our same customers. And so we love partnering with them as well, whether it be on webinar events like you guys are doing, or all type like content, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a few more questions, but if Mike is still here, we could bring him in. I think he had a couple of questions for you, possibly. Mike?
Hey, what's up? I think I'm unfrozen. I guess I was frozen in a good position, apparently, so I didn't look like too much of a fool. But yeah, no, I'm loving this. I'm loving this interview right now, Liz. You're dropping some huge value bombs, and I love what your platform's doing, because I think fundamentally with us too in our company, like we really value, especially young college students, internships, all of that so much. And right now, it's one of those things where you almost, to get an entry level job, you need like 1 to 3 years of experience, which is like very strange, but that's just how it is these days. So for us, we try to have 3 to 5 interns every summer, just to give them some experience and some exposure to. So I love what you're doing. It seems like you guys are really forward thinking in that regard. We have some questions that were coming in through YouTube here. And then, so this one is interesting too. So it's kind of some of the things that I was just mentioning. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, where it's kind of like the catch-22 scenario. You have, you need experience to get the job, but you need the job to get the exposure. So how do you recommend like a lot of strategies or advice to people doing this? So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Two pieces of advice we always give. So it's a great question. So the first one is, if you're in college, and this really mainly applies to students, like you should be working throughout college, whether in part-time jobs, part-time internships, full-time summer internships, and so on and so forth. So that's first and foremost. But secondly, I think a lot of people don't recognize how much experience they have, that they just need to write it in the right way. So let me give you an example. Sometimes some companies are saying, I need you to have 1 year of sales experience. Well, if you've done 3 different part-time jobs, each for 6 months, from high school to college, or after college, where you were a waitress or something like that, and you were actually trying to upsell your customers at the tables and saying, well, for just $5 more, you can get this and all that, like that is real sales experience. And so sometimes people think, well, I've never worked in an SDR or account executive position at a company. But sometimes you actually do have sales experience, that you just need to rethink how you frame it and how you tell that story. So my biggest advice in that respect is to make sure that you're getting as much experience as possible. The reason I had so many jobs and internships in college is because I had no idea what the heck I wanted to do, and I wanted to try as much as possible to figure out what I like and what I don't like. And I'm still figuring that out today. But number 2 is definitely to make sure that you're framing your experience in the best possible way.
Fantastic. I think that's great advice. And this kind of goes along with it too. It's a similar kind of question here. How do you stand out? Like in these, I'm sure you've kind of now seen from the data and statistics that you've gathered, maybe like what people are putting in the resumes and things like that make them stand out to actually land these jobs. I'm sure right now, especially with everything going on, there's so many qualified people competing for the same jobs, especially recent college graduates who are trying to land their first job. And now that other people have been let go, they have way more experience. How can some of these, younger people stand out? Or whether it's a startup or maybe even a corporate job, how can people, or what could they throw on their resume, or recommend the cold email strategy? I mean, I love when people email me and like, hey, how can I work with you, or are you guys hiring, things like that.
Yeah, cold emails don't always work for like larger companies often, because those companies are recruiting 300 entry-level software engineers or 300 entry-level CS people or something like that, customer support people. So it might be a little harder to get in the door that way, and they might want you to go through a more structured process. But cold emailing, especially at a startup, is definitely a great way I'll tell you, if you're cold emailing, back to what I was saying earlier, making sure that it's a really personalized email. So I get so many cold emails from candidates all the time that are like pretty kind of generic, to be totally frank. Whereas one guy I hired who worked for us for a couple of years, was a total all-star, ended up starting his own company, which I ended up investing in because he's just such an all-star. His name's Ali Khan. He had he had emailed me, and in his email he said, I'd love to buy you a grande ice coffee in a grande iced coffee in a venti cup, unsweetened, but with soy milk. And I was like, who is this guy? This is so creepy. How does he know my coffee order? And
that's exactly what you order all the time. That's
wild. And I was like, what the heck? And then, of course, when I asked him how he knew, he was like, you mentioned it on this podcast, and I listened to I'm so excited about your business. I've listened to every podcast you've been on. I've read all these articles, et cetera. So it was just an example of like phenomenal cold email work. And that's, been my bar ever since. But to answer your question of how you can stand out as a candidate, aside from cold emailing, I think on a resume, there are certainly ways to have your resume completely bomb. Like if your resume is more than one page, no matter how experienced you are, a lot of companies will automatically reject it or will automatically remove the second page. After the first page, we'll delete those and we'll just look at your first page. So like have your resume on one page. So there are ways, spelling errors will often, a lot of companies say if you have spelling errors or clear grammatical errors, they're just going to immediately reject you. So like those are the ways to bomb. But in terms of how to stand out, I think it's about making yourself, showing how you're unique. So if you can show that you've been through adversity, I cannot think of a single company that doesn't want someone who's been through adversity. Like students, for example, who are first generation college students if you're comfortable, should emphasize that, because that means you've been through a lot. Like the statistics were stacked against you to finish college, and you did it. And so there's a lot of ways to basically help yourself stand out. And I would say it's emphasizing what makes you unique, what only you can say in the world, and then of course what you've been through to kind of show that you've been through adversity.
Fantastic. I think that's great advice. Those are all this very similar things that I look for as well. Since we're such a young company, I mean, you're a lot further along than we are, but I love when people just email me straight and are trying to figure out a way to work with us in some capacity. We have another question here. I'm sure you've gotten this a lot, especially when you are pitching. This is something that, as you start the fundraising thing and as you start growing a startup, you always get compared to other existing companies, right? So I think I understand it. Yeah, obviously, it seems like you're way more geared towards entry-level internships, younger, kind of professionals in a sense. And it seems like you're more of a curated and you're more of like a concierge kind of than just like, hey, post it and get it out to everyone, and we take anything and everyone. But I'd love for you to maybe clear up, maybe for other people watching and whatnot, or it's probably good for other people to understand how they can pitch themselves in the sense when getting compared to other companies too. So from your perspective, what separates you guys from Indeed and Monster and maybe some of the other job platforms that are out there?
Sure. So you probably got this a lot at the beginning. I don't think I've done in the what has this different from Indeed or Monster in a couple of years. So I'm a little rusty on this one, but we're quite different. So you definitely nailed some of it. But so we're not really just a job board. Like it's a very small part of what we do. So when candidates are on WayUp, certainly they can apply for jobs, which to this person's point is like absolutely relevant to an Indeed or Monster. But you also have a profile, which is kind of more like a LinkedIn. So I've gotten a lot of how this is different than LinkedIn, in which case there's a whole nother answer. But so you have a profile, you can get found and sourced by employers, but we send you prep materials throughout the entire process. Like we really are your partner throughout your process. And then on top of that, we actually do the screening for the company. So not just the digital screen, but also even the phone screen. And so a lot of companies, like if you apply for a job with Under Armour, with Dow Jones, with NASDAQ, with I could go on and name tons of companies that we've worked with over the years. where if you apply for a job through WayUp with them, you find out if you're qualified on the spot. You can get a phone screen right then and there. You then get feedback from that phone screen. You're getting prep materials the whole way, and then you go on to a final round interview with the company. So you could go from application to final round interview in 48 hours. So we're really about how can we remove that black hole that, a lot of people say, like, I apply for 20 jobs and I hear back from one. So how can we remove that concept of the ATS, the applicant tracking system, black hole? So that's a big part of it, but there's also a lot of other stuff we do. I mean, our focus, as you mentioned, on early career talent and also on diverse talent and leveling the playing field. Like, the analytics we show to our clients are unbelievable. We're able to show, hey, female candidates in STEM are failing this round of your interview 30% more of the time than men. Here's a recommendation we have for you. So we really also are much more white glove when it comes to recommendations that we'll provide to employers.
That's great. That's great. And you get a response time in 24 hours. I mean, you don't get that with any of those companies. Let's wrap it up just with your words to live by, personal mantra or ethos to give the community a little bit of encouragement.
Sure. I think that, people always ask me, not always, people ask me sometimes in interviews, what's your biggest regret? Like, what do you wish you did differently? And my philosophy on everything is to have as few regrets as possible, and actually not say that I wish I did differently, but instead say I learned from my mistakes. So I've made so many mistakes, but I have pretty few regrets. And I would say it's because each of those mistakes I've tried to learn from it. So I would just say to everyone, try to take that perspective. If you're an entrepreneur, as you're starting your business, if you're a professional at a corporate, at a company, from any mistakes you might be making there, and try to learn from every mistake that you make so that you don't look at them as mistakes. And so instead that you look at them as learnings.
Right. Then you can go from good to great, like your company is.
Exactly.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate your time, Nadal, and everybody else who's been watching. You can check out the replay, Entre.com or join Entre.com. That's it. Thanks, Liz.